Hello and welcome to WorldCanvass from International Programs at the University of Iowa. I'm Joan Kerr. I'm happy to have you with us for our very special program honoring the recipients of the University of Iowa's International Impact and Global Student Awards. Here to get us started is Associate Provost and Dean of International Programs, Russ Ganim.
Thank you very much, Joan. On behalf of the Office of International Programs at the University of Iowa, please let me extend my warmest of welcomes to our award recipients, our panelists, and to the audience at home tonight. As many of you know, we are currently celebrating International Education Week. This event, held every year at the end of November, highlights the value of global learning not only in academic settings, but in government, business, and private philanthropy. This year, we take advantage of International Education Week to spotlight the accomplishments and resilience of our international students, scholars, and faculty. There is no doubt that this past year has been an especially difficult one for these members of our Hawkeye family. Please know that we will always stand by and advocate for our international students and scholars and will champion the enormous contributions they make to our campus community. Global experiences and international perspectives are essential to preparing not just our students, but the citizens of Iowa for the future that lies ahead. In that vein, tonight's WorldCanvass event, Iowa in the World, will honor Hawkeyes who represent an inspirational and enduring commitment to global education and global well-being. Through their example, we continue to learn the important role that Iowa and Iowans play in the world at large. This evening, we celebrate the 2020 recipients of the UI's International Impact Award, Sarah Lande and Susan and Patrick Keefe, as well as the recipients of the 2020 Global Student Awards, Mishma, Nixon, and Nicholas Stroup. And for the award presentations, it is my honor to present UI President J. Bruce Harreld. It has been my great pleasure to work with President Harreld in a number of capacities over the last 5 years. The Office of International Programs is grateful for President Harreld's leadership, accessibility, and collegiality in especially difficult times. A large reason why global education succeeds at Iowa is because President Harreld recognizes the importance of international experiences and values the interactions global learning creates on an academic, professional, and interpersonal level. President Harreld is a great friend of the international community, and I am proud to introduce him as he makes our formal award presentations. Thank you in advance, Bruce.
Thank you, Dean Ganim. Just nod your head if you can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Just double checking, and boy, do I support the international community. I'm teaching right now, and I said a few days ago to some of my students that if they get the chance, not just to travel abroad, but to live abroad, do so. It will change your life. I have 4 kids, and they all have their partners, and among those 8 partners, 4 of them are Mandarin speakers, several are French speakers, a couple are Italians as speakers, and they've lived all around the world. And it really makes our world better to have these types of bonds and relationships. And you'll see why in just 2 seconds. It's indeed our honor to recognize those that have made a huge difference, not only in our community, but around the world. You'll see this evening as we honor these individuals that Hawkeyes, in fact, have made a huge difference in making the world smaller through their international efforts. A great example is Sarah Lande. Sarah from Muscatine, Iowa, earned her BA and MBA degrees from the University of Iowa. She served as a board member, president, executive director of the Iowa Sister States, and she recently served as co-chair of the 30th Anniversary Committee, celebrating the sister state relationship between the state of Iowa and the Hubei province in China. Sarah's citizenship diplomacy efforts with China began way back in 1985 when she arranged a Muscatine itinerary for a very distinguished gentleman, Xi Jinping. and it was his initial visit to Iowa. She hosted that dinner for Xi Jinping and his delegation in her home. And then 25 years later, lo and behold, Xi Jinping became vice president in China, and she rehosted him once again in her home in Muscatine. In 2013, Sarah was named an honorary friendship ambassador by the Chinese People's Association of Friendship with Foreign Countries. Sarah Lande is a recipient of course, our UI Distinguished Alumni Award for service and the Athena Award for women's leadership. And she served on numerous community and international relations organizations. So it's my great honor to present this year's International Impact Award to Sarah Lande. Sarah, please favor us with a few words.
Very much. I think you can hear me. I hope I have it on. So thank you for those kind remarks. And certainly I believe in every respect the value of living abroad, international friendships. I totally think a world of friends and living around, getting to know other cultures is how we're going to have peace in our world. I've had an opportunity through meeting with Xi Jinping, starting out going to China in 1984 and recently there for the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. But I'll have to say, I thank you for this award, but I really believe the citizens of Muscatine and the state of Iowa are the ones that should receive the award. They have contributed so much through their friendships. Early on, Max Stanley with the Stanley Foundation brought visitors in around the world, and then Bob Ray and Governors Terry Branstad established Iowa's sister state, so friendships could come back and forth. And wow, do I have a heart full of memories when the world opened up to China and opened up to Russia. We got to see these countries and meet the people, and we became a family of friends. So I hope in the future I could do things to provide those opportunities to people in Iowa, communities of the world, like you, President Harreld, give them a chance to know people from around the world, and then your attitude change. You know, we are all citizens, there's one world, and what's best for one is really best for all. So thank you. I'll do my best to try to carry it on for young people and make opportunities for everyone. And President Harreld, you know that all along the way, well, I think I'm a super Hawkeye too, and in many ways, but through all the things that have happened with international exchanges, Iowa University is always there, whether it's international programs, Hampshire's, the international writing program, they're always there. Downey Thomas in your program said, sure, can I help and join him? So thank you. I love the Hawkeyes and I love what they're doing internationally.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for letting us honor you. And you know, it's just incredible as we all travel around the world. We all have those Tiger Hawks on, and I go through the Heathrow Airport or Beijing Airport, and it's just everybody said, "Go Hawks, go Hawks!" And so it's just thank you for all you've done personally. You're a great representative, not only of the University of Iowa, not only of Iowa, and not only of our country, but a great representative of our globe. So thank you very, very much. Our next honorees are, you'll see the same pattern here, of big time international supporters. We're honored to present this next International Impact Award this evening to Patrick and Susan Keefe. Patrick earned his bachelor's degree in pharmacy here at the UI, and his career has encompassed being an executive, consultant, and entrepreneur in the healthcare field. And in 1971, Pat and Susan volunteered with the Diocese of Davenport to be medical workers. Pat as a pharmacist, Susan as a nurse, in a remote Mexican mountain village. The Keefe family has continued to care for underserved or vulnerable communities ever since then, including immigrant populations, women and children during and after pregnancy, and those who are hungry or undernourished. At the University of Iowa, the Keefe family has generously supported various initiatives in the College of Pharmacy, including a professorship and a scholarship. Through their support here at the university and beyond, Pat and Susan continue to focus on mentorship, education, and creating opportunity in the arena of global and international issues. It's my great honor to present this year's International Impact Award to Pat and Susan. Again, incredible Hawkeyes, incredible citizens of the world. Pat and Susan, please share, if you will, a few words with us. Thank you.
Well, Sue and I would like to thank President Harreld, International Programs Associate Provost and Dean Russ Ganim, and the University of Iowa for the 2020 International Impact Award. Sue and I are the first two people in our families that ever went to college. And that education gave us a springboard to success in life. And we've always felt that we had a responsibility to share not only our education, but whatever financial things that we can do for people that maybe don't have as much as we have. So that's been kind of what has driven us over the years. And we're very grateful for the award. Thank you very much.
And I thank you as well. It's a big honor. Needless to say, the University of Iowa is the best university in the world at our house. No one questions it. So to win an award like this is magnificent. And we do thank you so much.
Well, I think everyone can see why Pat and Susan are such great friends of the university. And thank you once again for all that you've done. And yes, there really is only one university around the world. The rest are just brands. So thank you ever so much. It's wonderful. You know, we are here at this university as a result of great efforts like these three alumni that we've just recognized, but we're also here for students. And so I'm pleased to present a Global Student Award to two remarkable Hawkeyes. First is Mishma Nixon, and she's a first generation undergraduate student from Colombo, Sri Lanka. And she's in the honors program, majoring in English and creative writing. Mishma has served as the cultural director of the Campus Activities Board, organizing large-scale events such as the Taste of Asia and facilitating collaborative events such as Basant with the Pakistani Student Organization and Multicultural Showcase with Oasis. She's currently the vice president of the South Asian Student Alliance and the undergraduate chair of the International Student Advisory Board, which provides support for international students through advocacy and program support. Mishma's career goals are to research, write, and facilitate diversity and inclusion in children's literature. She hopes to go to graduate school and to write and publish the stories she's always wanted to read when she was growing up. It's my great honor to present a Global Student Award to Mishma Nixon. Mishma, please share a few words with us.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you to International Programs. Thank you, President Harreld. It's definitely special to receive this award in this specific semester because I am back home in Sri Lanka right now. So it feels even more to be recognized for being an international student and campus internationalization. And I really want to thank every student and administrative staff I've worked with, especially through the International Student Advisory Board, because this year especially has been very challenging for a lot of international students. So it's been very, very special and very helpful to see. And I'm like very appreciative of how everyone has stepped up and everyone has spoken up for international students. And I really hope that that continues. And yeah, I'm just very happy to be here and share this with all of these great people. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mishma. And I've lost track of my time zones here, but are you 11 and a half hours off of us?
Yes, I am. So it is 5 a.m. here.
Right. That's what I was trying to double check. I was going to, I always didn't know which way to go, whether you're ahead or behind, but at any rate, thank you. And just so everyone knows, Mishma and I were just in a meeting together for about an hour before this with a whole bunch of student leaders. So she's not only a great global citizen, she's a great Hawkeye, and really providing insight as to the struggles that all of us are going through as students and learners during this very difficult time period. So Mishma, thank you all for all that you've done. I'm sure your classes hopefully are over for the day. Get some early breakfast and go to bed. Thank you ever so much. And finally, I'd like to thank you. Finally, I'd like to spend a moment introducing Nicholas Stroup. Nicholas is a PhD candidate in educational policy and leadership studies here at the university. And in 2019, he earned a Stanley Award for international research that allowed him to travel to Kosovo, which was has a sister state relationship with Iowa. Nicholas interviewed PhD seekers in Kosovo about their desires to pursue doctoral education. Nicholas has also worked to build a digital map of undergraduate access to higher education in Kosovo and to catalog accreditation decisions about Kosovo's post-secondary institutions. In 2019, Nicholas traveled to Norway as part of Dr. Casey Barnhart's collaboration with the University of Oslo. He studied how international and domestic graduate students in Norway and the US fund their higher education pursuits and experience disability services on their campuses. Nicholas has continued to work on a variety of transnational research projects on the graduate study experience and research methods throughout the international arena. Nicholas's career goal is to become a professor of higher education, either here, when I say here, not just the US, but maybe right here in Iowa City or abroad. And so it's my great honor to turn the podium over to Nicholas, who will now receive a Global Student Award. Nicholas, please share a few thoughts with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Harreld, and to everyone in international programs. I came to Iowa because of the international opportunities that were offered here, and it's the support of everyone involved in making the student experience and all of the nested experiences that allow for us to do the research of our dreams for me, it's in Coralville. All of that has been life-changing for me. And so I'm incredibly thankful. And I'm glad that doing some research allows us to start to look at some of the big problems in society, pulling from all different parts of the world, looking at things through lenses that can only be solved through intercultural communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas, and thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think our world really needs, as all of our awardees this evening mentioned one way or the other, yes, it's a big world, but we're all connected. And the more connected we are, the more we communicate, the more we share, the more we study problems together, the better off our world will be. Thank you all for letting us award you this small token of our appreciation for all that you've done for us and for the world. Again, congratulations to all of you for receiving your International Impact Awards and to as well to our student award winners. We're so proud and grateful for all that you've done. And wherever you are in the world, just remember you're once a Hawkeye. You're always a Hawkeye. Russ, let me turn it back to you for a few final words.
Thank you, Bruce. What I really cherish about this particular moment is the way that the community comes together. We see the student population, we see faculty, we see staff, and we see alumni. And it's that kind of unity that can propel us forward. This is what International Education Week is all about. This is what the Office of International Programs is all about. It's that sense of community and that sense of doing things together. And so we're grateful for the support and we're grateful to be able to show just a small token of our appreciation for everything that our alums and students and faculty and staff do for us.
Okay, well, we'll be back in just a moment. First, we'll just take a pause. Well, welcome back to WorldCanvass. It's my pleasure to be joined by International Impact Award recipient Sarah Lande and two other special guests, Dimi Dureska, the director of the Institute for International Business in the University of Iowa's Tippie College of Business, and Russ Ganim, associate provost and dean of international programs. Hello, everyone. Sarah, I see you there on the screen. I'm sorry we can't be meeting in person today for such a lovely event, but this will certainly do. Congratulations once again on your International Impact Award and for all of the commendations you've received throughout your lifetime. We just heard President Harreld a moment ago name many of them, and obviously they speak to your commitment to Iowa and to the idea of citizen diplomacy and person-to-person outreach, friendships that can open doors to global understanding. Can you tell us how you first became interested in international relations?
Well, yes, when we came to Muscatine, I mentioned in an early remark, my husband was an attorney with David Stanley, and his father was Maxwell Stanley, who had started the Stanley Foundation after World War II, and he brought visitors in from around the world, whether it was like people going to the moon, but from all over the world. And that ended up having a flavor of internationalism in our community. You know, Stanley's led great decisions, different discussions. Then also because of that, we had early discussions on China. You know, China was opening up. Who was it? And about that time, our former governor, Bob Ray, initiated a sister state relationship with Hebei. And there was an article in the paper that said, anyone would like to be involved in this? Raise your hand. So I said yes. And then he and his wife led a 3-week tour to China, 1984, where only bicycles, deep fried grasshoppers, but I fell in love with China at that time. And then the Iowa Sister States organization was started up to help facilitate these relationships after Governor Ray left office. But during his time, he was president of the International Friendship Force. He was on the U.S. delegation to the UN, and he welcomed refugees from Cambodia to our state. So everything was open up. We all were sort of globalists, and, you know, perestroika, that was opening up, and there was a chance to be excited about the world. And I jumped in and said, sure, I'd like to be involved.
Well, it does seem as though you were sort of right in the middle of it. Obviously, the Stanley family has been not only involved with the University of Iowa, but we know about the Stanley Foundation for Peace and Security and their longstanding interest in creating those relationships between people and nations and trying to figure out some of the, you know, big issues and big concerns between countries and individuals. You already mentioned Governor Ray and the welcome of the refugees from Southeast Asia, which, you know, when I was a girl, this was just an incredible thing to see happen. And it felt like Iowa was a very special state.
Yes, he had Iowa Cares and Iowa Shares, and, you know, people gave money, you know, $10 here and there. And it was sometimes during the relationships when he went over to Cambodia and tried to work that out, that he ended up spending some time in China and getting his just passion for the world. And, you know, now I hope we can have more of that international feeling come back, because Iowa was the leader and Bob Ray opened it up for everyone. Would you like to be involved? And we were all volunteers, and somebody would host you abroad. You had to pay your way, but there was a chance for everybody to welcome somebody to their home. And it just, it was a wonderful time of year. You know, Khrushchev came. It was a grand time under his leadership in Iowa to say, let's be part of the world, or bring them to us and go to them.
So what is the core of your interest in this international engagement, global engagement? It isn't only about the economic relationships, which are important, but economic relationships that Iowans might have with people who live in other parts of the world, and our industrial relationships and so on. It's much more than that. It's much more about a person-to-person connection.
Yes, I think so. And I'm a real believer that people-to-people friendships sort of lay the foundation, and possibly, we hope, our national leaders will follow. But even when people were invited back with Xi Jinping, and he gave a talk to them, he said, if our people get to know each other, then the countries can get along. And I think when you meet people from another country, it's so exciting to learn about them and their culture. They become a family of friends. So it's exciting and exhilarating. And then you know that we're part of the world, of a great world, not the only thing. We have values, and so do they, but that's what makes it interesting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So just taking a moment more to talk about this relationship that you developed, this friendship with Xi Jinping and the other people in China connected to this outreach to the States. How do you, obviously we've seen international relations twist and turn, and administrations come and go. How do you on a personal level feel about that connection you established with people from China?
Well, the people are strong. I have a long friendship with them. And I think people in China and the US hope that the relationships are better. But I think if we can find ways to work together on maybe energy, global warming and things, and keep the people-to-people relationship strong, building trust, then our people are at the national level. We'll have to address some of the differences there are there, but let's don't shout about it. Let's work on the things we can do together. And, I have people there, they sent masks and things over during the COVID, and, they call me Mama. I love the people there. And I think if we can keep that strong over time, it will influence the leaders. And, we have a strong competitor, but to me, the best way to deal with a strong competitor is get stronger yourself. Find out where you can work together. Don't blame them. Get our education at the University of Iowa stronger in research. So, we can be competitive when we need to.
Mm-hmm. Well, you just brought in the university, so let me turn to Dimi Dureska. Dimi, you nominated Sarah Lande for this award, and I know that she works with you at your institute and also meets with your students. Tell us about your relationship with Sarah.
Can you hear me? For some reason, my camera was working, but all of a sudden it stopped working. So
we can hear you.
Okay, very good. Well, I used to work in Muscatine for Stanley Consultants, and I used to hear about Sarah when I was at Stanley, and I spent 8 years at Stanley, and 2 of them were in Muscatine. And one of the years I was in Muscatine was the time when Vice Premier Xi Jinping returned to Muscatine and to visit the house where he was when he was an exchange student in Iowa. And that's when I got to see Sarah, but we never met. I saw her when the vice premier was in town in Muscatine. And when I became the director of the Institute for International Business, my former boss at Stanley Consultants, Greg Stomopoulos, as well as a dean at the College of Business, told you should invite Sarah to be part of your advisory board at the Institute for International Business. And I quickly reached out to Sarah, and within a few hours after I sent the email to her, she accepted to take a phone call from me. And we talked on the phone, and I told her about my passion for internationalizations, and I told her about my vision for the Institute for International Business and how I would like to get some of her wisdom to be part of my advisory council. And she accepted my invitation, and since 2015, she's been on my advisory board and provided me guidance on how that I can manage to get our students the international experience that they deserve, and the international exposure that they needs to have in order for them to be competitive with their peers around the world. And I can tell you, Sarah is really the embodiment of citizen diplomacy, and she breathes and lives international. I mean, whenever you talk to her, you can feel it. You can kind of like see what's going on, and the way that she sees citizen diplomacy. This is something that I've never seen in my career, in my 20-year career in international business. And she believes that this is how U.S. should be shown around the world, and this is how, by using common citizen that can show the good values of the American people. So really, in a nutshell, that's my experience with Sarah.
Yeah. And Sarah, what is it like for you to engage with these students who haven't yet had the experiences you've had, but are surely looking forward to them?
Oh, it's so exciting. When we come to board meetings, there were some people that had been to Haiti and back, and, it just opens their eyes. And, Demi, he is too bad you can't see him because he lights up the room. He is a gem and a half, he cares and cares. But the opportunities that he has brought Iowans, and having the Mandela scholars come to Iowa to meet with the businesses, to meet with individuals, to sort of learn our values and how we do work is really exciting. And when these young people get that opportunity, they come back. Once you've traveled abroad, you've got it. You became sort of a world citizen. That, sure, you're a member of the United States, but the world there's so many other things to learn about, and let's get along,
That's correct. That is correct. And it's the type of experience that we provided to our students. And when we get Sarah to explain to them why it's important for them at such a young age to be exposed to international experience. And when Sarah started telling about her travels, how she's being involved in building relationships worldwide, that's something that we need to have, for our students. It's one thing when all of us faculty, we are telling them, but it's another thing when you have others coming from our community telling the importance of international travel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Russ, let me bring the conversation to you. As we already mentioned, and you spoke about a little bit earlier, this is International Education Week. What part does citizen diplomacy play in global education?
Well, it's absolutely essential. I mean, if you go back into history a little bit, into the 1940s and the 1950s, and the work that Senator J. William Fulbright did and the work that President Eisenhower did, the emphasis was always on people-to-people exchanges. So on a very small level, the idea was to create connections between cultures that would start with individuals, and that this would evolve over time into sort of larger relationships, say between institutions, between regions, between countries. But the idea is that connections between people usually last longer and are more meaningful, and can contribute more value than presumably sort of contrived relationships or collaborations on a political level or on a business level, those are more fragile, or they're more susceptible to coming apart, whereas people-to-people bonds are more enduring. And I think that that's kind of the philosophy behind the work that Senator Fulbright and President Eisenhower did, and that's what we try to promote during International Education Week.
Yeah, well, there are lots of events happening during International Education Week, and I'll just take a moment here to mention that if you're interested in finding out what events are happening here at the University of Iowa, we have a full list on our website, and you can find it at international.uiowa.edu. Russ, international students have had a particularly trying year. Many of our students have, of course. COVID hasn't been easy on anybody, on students or on faculty, staff members. But the international students have had a particularly interesting experience this year. Are you feeling as though the communication through campus sources and through individual departments, and certainly what we try to do in international programs, do you think that that's provided what was needed for these students during this time?
I do. I mean, we can always do more and we can always do better. But I think that, if you look at the time from when COVID hit throughout the spring and then the summer with, various proclamations and executive orders and different policies coming down that weren't favorable toward international students or international scholars, what was I think, a silver lining in all of this was the fact that our community was very quick to rally around international students and scholars. And so it wasn't just, messages coming from our office. It was communication and outreach from faculty, from other students, from community members to show our international students and scholars that they belong here, that they're part of our community, that this is their home as well. And I was very encouraged at how quickly that our various sectors of our community showed support for those members of the Hawkeye family who were from international destinations. And, we had several emails from students and their families thanking us for this rapid show of support and solidarity with a community that, quite frankly, felt vulnerable, if not threatened.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a nice circle, huh, Sarah? We send students out, students come here, and the phrase that has stuck out to me when I've read stories about you is this statement that you believe in waging peace through friendship. And yes. I think that's just wonderful.
Well, I certainly feel that way too. And, from our relationships with China, we're still strong friendships there. And it's interesting. Our whole community is volunteers when, we host. We haven't had a big bankroll for it. So when Xi Jinping came to Muscatine, he homestayed in people's homes. And I think that and we had potluck dinners, they never have done that at homes. And when he left our home in 2012, he said to the people, to the old friends, he said, you were the first people we met in America. To me, you are America. And I think they didn't have friendship like that. So there's a true caring. And when he came back in 2012 and walked in our door, the smile on his face and the handshake, he was eager to see them again. Now we hope our relationships can get friendly or over time, or that we can deal with our differences in a constructive way. Mm-hmm. But the people just really care about each other. And for the time when I've worked with sister states too, whether it's the people in Russia or in Mishma, Iowa had the first sister state in the United States with a state in Russia and the Soviet Union before that. And my goodness, the friendships that are so strong from that, and that is slowed down too, but whether it's giving medical advice back and forth, and the fun memories too from when Governor Branstad and his wife went over to sign the agreement, and goodness sakes, he had Marvin Pomerantz with him, and something had happened, so there was no visas to let us in. So they had to run out to the airport to give us things. But, you know, there were flowers for Chris and the governor, and the governor's office always welcomed people. And one more quick story about friendship and welcoming, even in the Xi Jinping story. In 2011, the year before Xi Jinping came to Iowa, Governor Branstad had gone to China, hoping to meet with the president of China, encouraging trade. But instead, he had a 45-minute meeting with Xi Jinping in the Great Hall of the People. And at that meeting, Xi Jinping brought the itinerary of his time in Iowa, an exact time and minute that he was in the governor's office. And people have said at that time, we didn't know his background so much that seldom were people given that strong a welcome to be in the governor's office. And, you know, that showed respect, and it came back too. So we hope we can build on that foundation, but that's what friendship can do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Dimi, we can see you now. Before we break
Yes.
off, is there anything further you would like to say?
You know, if there is one person that I know for sure is working hard to improve the friendship between China and the United States, it's Lande. And I can tell you, with her, you know, good citizen diplomacy, that friendship is going to improve, and the state of Iowa will benefit, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations again, Sarah, and thank you, Russ. Thank you, Dimi, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hello again. I'm Joan Kerr for International Programs, and I'm joined by International Impact Award recipients Patrick and Susan Keefe. Hello. Also with us are Don Latendra, Dean of the College of Pharmacy, and Janine Abrams, Clinical Associate Professor in the College of Pharmacy. And welcome to all of you. It's a great honor to meet you, Susan and Pat, and to have a chance to talk with you about your decades-long commitment to global health and to marginalized and under-resourced communities. Can you take us back a little bit and tell us how you first became involved in helping people in need?
Well, Sue and I just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Almost 50 years ago, we decided to volunteer as medical volunteers in Mexico. Not only did we volunteer at that time, but Sue was pregnant with our first child. So we went to a part of Mexico, Chiapas, which is a state that borders on Guatemala. And we were assigned to a small town in the mountains called Tila. Tila was basically a community that serves the Chol Indians, which is a Mayan Indian tribe. We were 2 volunteers behind the church with a couple of priests, and they asked us to start up a medical clinic. Nobody in that part of the of Chiapas had ever seen any kind of modern medicine. Their way of treating tuberculosis was to cut a chicken up and put the blood on somebody's chest. So we started a medical clinic, and we initially did a lot of just handing out medicine from the World Health Organization. But after a while, we realized that we had to educate people. So we realized that education is really the key, and access to good healthcare should be something that everybody in the world has the ability to do without regardless to wealth. So our last year and a half there, We basically, Sue trained women that came in to be midwives. I went out to the small Indian villages with a priest. He would show a film on Jesus Christ, and I had a little microscope, and I would show them what their water was like when it was unboiled, because parasitic diseases was a huge problem. So that also taught us that we in the United States in particular have so much wealth. They had nothing. I mean, I'm just telling you, it was primitive living at the best, day to day. And yet, if somebody got sick or somebody needed something, people would just go over to their house and share with whatever they had. Unlike maybe a lot of people that share out of their surplus, but not really out of what they have. And that kind of started us on our path of social justice. So after the 3 years there, and our son was born there, and this was a town without running water, without electricity. And so it bonded the relationship between Sue and I. I mean, you think in COVID, you spent a lot of time together. 3 years in a small town where most people didn't even speak Spanish. They spoke a Mayan dialect. Was life-changing for both of us, and that really was got started on our ability to say we have to do more for people that are underserved.
Well, before we talk about what came after that, I just have to say you both had a lot of grit. I mean, obviously you wanted to do this, but to be there for 3 years and in really rather difficult physical circumstances to have your first child, Sue, congratulations.
Oh, we were naive puppies. I mean, it was absolutely incredible what we didn't know. But we learned a great deal, and we learned that we could trust in each other. You know, it cemented our marriage. And so overall, it was a wonderful experience.
Wow. So can you tell us about some of the other places around the world you've taken your skills and some of the other communities you've worked with?
Well, I can talk about my work in Nicaragua, and then Pat, as you know, does work in Uganda. Uh-huh. So 20 years ago, our Catholic Church started a twinning building relationship with an educational center in Managua, Nicaragua. So I have been very involved in that for 20 years. And we provide scholarships for the students, not only to come to the center, but to go to grade school and high school and college. The center is a wonderful place, just great people who love each other and have such love that they want to share with others. So I love teenagers. And so I've taken 15 trips down with teenagers. Over 300 kids and adults have gone down with me. And they left the secure little township here in Cincinnati and opened up their eyes to these people that we work with, our brothers and sisters. They're exactly the same as us. And so that's been a wonderful experience for me. And so our work in Nicaragua continues.
Yeah, I'd add about what Sue has done down there. When it got started by a nun and a priest, and they're no longer there. Both of them are deceased. But Sue has really been the spark plug to keep it going, and it's really empowering women. This barrio in Managua is the worst one in the city. Poverty is overwhelming, and most women face a lot of domestic abuse, never got an education. Well, the center gives them a chance to get an education. And I'm not talking about, some of them learn to read and write, but it's more like learning how to bake, how to be a beautician, how to use a computer, how to be a cashier. So instead of selling chiclets on the street, I don't know if anybody's ever been in a third world country where a bus comes to a stop and people are there selling chiclets. These women now have a way of making a living, being in their home, and therefore when their children come home, they're not roaming around the street. So it's a very powerful thing. And the interesting part is the education. Those kids come back and service the community as teachers, as volunteers. So again, educating people allows them to then come back and support their own community.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what is the first reaction, and what is the reaction at the end of the experience for the teenagers you take down, Sue? I take it as probably a mix of boys and girls.
It is, and they come away with, many of them have gone on to the Peace Corps, and many of them gone on to be Jesuit volunteers or volunteers with other communities. A lot of them have worked in with the immigrants who come to the United States. Our parish has sponsored immigrant families from Sudan and also from Egypt. So they've been able to become involved in that way. And then we have a very large Hispanic population in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we've done is develop luncheons where you sit down and meet people who their first language is Spanish, and you get to know them as an individual, and that's here in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. So the kids do gain a great deal from the trip, but so do the adults. I think for the adults, sometimes, we take away more pearls of wisdom because we know what life is really like. And the teenagers, God love them, they are teenagers. So they haven't had those life experiences yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, Pat, tell us about your work in Uganda.
Well, for about 10 years, a group of doctors and nurses have supported a program in Uganda. And what they started off doing was there was a school there and a small clinic. And we would go over, and in the first years, all we would do is basically have, for 10 days, we would see close to 3,000 patients. But we realized quickly that once we left, what did that mean? I mean, you can't just come back once a year. So after the first year, we decided we had to do more to do education. So over 10 years, we have been able to develop health workers and given them stuff that they can then deal with out in people in their community. So if we know somebody has high blood pressure, they follow up with them. And these healthcare workers basically ask for the most primitive things to do their job: a backpack and a bicycle. Well, I've done the RAGBRAI twice, and you wouldn't want to have to ride a bicycle in the mountains there and the roads they have, and that's how those women get around. We started a woman co-op so that women had a way of making money to be able to take care of themselves, because many of the men are not as faithful to their wives as they should be. One thing we noticed early on is that everybody had to go down to the river with big jerry cans to get water. Parasitic diseases were rampant, and people would literally walk an hour and a half a day, fill a jerry can up, and come back. That's how they got their water. Well, we worked with Engineers Without Borders, and we were able to dig 2 deep wells. And we now provide clean, portable water to 6,000 patients or 6,000 families in that area. Wow. It's huge. And also the students, we've supported the scholarship program there. One of my greatest accomplishments, I think, is I met up with a young man named Joseph. He wanted to become a pharmacist, and I supported him, and a number of other people helped as well. And he graduated. And instead of staying in Kampala, where he could make a lot of money, he went back to his small rural community and opened a pharmacy so that he could take care of the people that were around him and his family. And I said to myself, it's empowering when people basically realize that they have to give back, that it isn't just for them. So the Uganda experience has been great. And probably Don and Jeannie can talk to you about it, but we had a chance to take some University of Iowa pharmacy students when I've gone. And I think it has been kind of eye-opening for them to see third world poverty.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for bringing Don and Janine into this conversation. Don, I think I'll go to you first, and maybe you can embellish a little bit on the connections that the Keefes have made, not only with you and with faculty in the College of Pharmacy, but also with your students. They've made a big difference, right?
Yeah, thank you very much, Joan. I appreciate that. And Pat and Sue, it's so good to see you, albeit virtually. I want to just take the privilege of the microphone here to just say a couple of things, if I could, please. First, I want to start out with Russ. Russ Ganim, Associate Provost and Dean, is my friend and colleague. And I just want to give a shout out to international programs. I could wax on, but when I think about Fulbright, when I think about all the various touch points that we have with our international students, make no mistake about it, but Russ and his team just do an extraordinary job. So I just want to give a tip of the hat to Dean Ganim and the rest of our colleagues there in international programs. They certainly deserve it. And Sarah did a wonderful job of underscoring just exactly why that's so important. And with that, I'd also like to extend hearty congratulations to Sarah and Mishma and Nick as well on behalf of the College of Pharmacy. We're just so very, very proud of what you've accomplished. I have been dean privileged. I'm only the 9th dean in the College of Pharmacy history. We started in 1885, so we've had good longevity amongst deans. And I started here in the summer of '07. So for the last 13 plus years, I've had the opportunity to get to know the Keefes quite well. And a couple of points. One, I think one of the reasons why we bonded very quickly is because we're all first generation collegiates. And that allowed us to have sort of a foundation of why education is so important and how we're so grateful to be where we are today, because without that education, we simply wouldn't be. And so we bonded very quickly. And by the way, Pat and Sue, I want to let you know that I'm here in the office. Louise is at home, but Louise is on this call, which is why 2 Donald attenders show up on the screen here. So Louise can't speak right now, but I'm sending big hugs from Louise, my spouse, who's also a nurse like Sue. So a pharmacist and nurse, I guess those are good combinations. She sends her love and best wishes to you as well. But when I think about Pat and Sue, we talk a lot in our college about walking the talk. And it's one thing to talk about healthcare and healthcare delivery, but it's something entirely different to really do things that have a meaningful impact on people's lives. And I would say without hesitation at all that Pat and Sue are poster childs, and I'll get to that in a moment. I forgive me for looking down, but I could do a lot of things off the cuff, but I did, in the essence of time, I did write down a few specific things that I wanted to call attention to, because these are things that we called attention to in our letter of nomination on behalf of the Keefes. One, as you know, as was articulated at the very beginning by President Harreld, they've been at this for a long time, like 50 years. When they started this, when they graduated in '71. So they're not newcomers to humanitarian efforts. And Sue, if I have the story correct, if I remember correctly, I think when Sue and Pat met, Sue was talking about her volunteer efforts. And that was one of the things that immediately they found kinship in that. And so Sue was the initial spark, but Pat was right there immediately and joined in. And that has not only been a powerful couple in this regard, but it has certainly been a bond, a very meaningful bond for the two of them throughout their entire life. For the last 30 years, they have served on boards, and let me, a few of these have been mentioned tangentially, but the Cincinnati Healthy Moms and Babes, the Friends of, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Batahola in Nicaragua, and the Hope for Kabingo in Uganda. So not only are they active at certain times of the year, they're active throughout the year with their engagement in boards that help. They were directly responsible for the resettlement of 2 international families. How many people can say that? One from Sudan and one from Syria. How many people can say that they actually helped to resettle a family and get them situated and give them a better life than what they had? They throughout the Keefe family, because of Pat and Sue and the example that they set, their whole family is dedicated to global health. It's inspiring. to see what goes on in that family. As President Harreld mentioned, they've been very generous with their resources. There are a number of places where they've supported the college, from our new facility to several scholarships and fellowships. But the one that I want to focus in on is the Patrick and Sue Keefe Service Learning Scholarship, which has been alluded to. And that's particularly important because what I want to say right now is perhaps the most important part of the words I want to convey as a dean. They have changed our students' lives, because by bringing students with them, they have opened their eyes to things that they never witnessed before. And to a letter, every one of those students has come back and said to me directly, my life is forever changed because of what I was able to do as a result of the Keefe Service Learning Program. And to me, that is just extraordinarily powerful to see the bells and whistles and lights go on and say, gosh, you know, I have a higher calling than what I'm seeing directly as a result of what they've done to help serve underserved populations. Because of that, and I'll close with this and then turn things over to Janine, who can elaborate more. Professor Abrams works directly with our students and can elaborate more about our student experiences. But I want to just close with this. We think so highly of what the Keefes have done. And as I mentioned at the outset, there are poster children, if you will, poster children for humanitarian effort.
I like that, yeah.
that our college saw fit in 2018 to establish the Patrick and Susan Keefe College. That Susan, I put Susan first in this case, the Sue and Pat Keefe College's inaugural humanitarian award, and they were our first recipients. That's how highly we think of them. So the Keefes walk the talk. Back to you, Joan.
Oh, thank you, Don. Gosh, wonderful, wonderful to hear. It sort of brings tears to my eyes, you know, to hear how the students are so changed and so moved. And I know that Janine, you heavily praised the commitment of the Keefes in the letter of nomination for helping students have that chance to have a humanitarian experience, an international experience. Please tell us about your work with these projects.
Yeah, I think Pat and Susan have opened doors to many of our students. They make the opportunities accessible to them. And not only that, I think one of the things that I've always really admired is that they show us how to make it a part of our life, right? Many of us think we have these big aspirations, we'd like to do these life-changing things, but I don't know how to get that done. The students that I've worked with have talked about how Pat and Susan have mentored them and have showed them the process from the start to finish. So involved them in the board meetings, got them involved with seeking donations, asked them to see opportunities to make improvements. And I think that mentorship, the experience is one thing, but the growth and the helping people to do that work elsewhere, I think that is so notable. Mm-hmm. I had the pleasure of talking with one of the former students that went, and we were talking about things that they had carried away. And specifically, the student mentioned compassion, that Pat and Susan taught her to see people in need and to see the opportunity to step in and to help. And I think that's just amazing that they've given that gift to our students in our community.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks,
Pat and Susan, before we wrap up here, is there anything you'd like to say to either Janine or to Don, or anything more about your own experience with the university?
Well, again, like I mentioned before, I think my pharmacy degree was really the springboard to my success in business, and also a recognition that you have to give back. I mean, I think the University of Iowa has done a good job of getting students to basically realize that they need to give back to the university, give back to their community. And I think Jeannie kind of followed behind Hazel Seba, who got the program started, but the University of Iowa College of Pharmacy does more than just send the students to Uganda. There's other programs that they do. And sometimes I think people in the Midwest forget that there's more to the world than just kind of the Midwest. And I think anything we can do to open our eyes to what's going on around the world, the adjunct poverty that exists, and our responsibility as a society to see what we can do. And I think Mother Teresa said it best. Sometimes you look at it, it's just overwhelming, and you just say to yourself, I'll just do it for one. If I can do it for one, maybe that'll be two. And I think that's the philosophy students need to have. Say, I may not be able to solve the world's problems, but I see somebody in need and I'm going to do something about it. And that starts a spark that Sue and I found 50 years ago that has led us to maybe have more than impact on more than just one person.
Wow. Well, beautifully said. And thank you so much for joining us tonight and for allowing us to give you this International Impact Award, which you obviously dearly deserve. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you. And thank you, Don. Thank you, Janine, for joining us in this celebration of the Keefes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Mm-hmm. Well, welcome back to WorldCanvass. I'm Joan Kerr. In this final part of tonight's program, we have the great pleasure of talking with two University of Iowa students who have been chosen from an exceptional group of nominees to receive the 2020 Global Student Awards. They are Mishma Nixon, an undergraduate student majoring in English and creative writing. Hi, Mishma.
Hello.
And Nicholas Stroup, a PhD candidate in educational policy and leadership studies. Hi, Nicholas.
Hello.
Apologies for the mispronunciation of your name earlier on. It was just a miscommunication. But anyway, very nice to see you both, and congratulations on your Global Student Awards. This is a pleasure for us to make this award. But you should know that there were so many wonderful nominees for this award. You really stand out among a very stellar group. I think I'll go to you first, Mishma. Your award recognizes your incredible contributions to campus internationalization. And we heard President Harreld talk a little bit about your active leadership here at the UI earlier in the program, but let's go back. Tell us about your decision to come to the University of Iowa from your home in Sri Lanka.
Yes, for sure. It was an interesting decision on my part, I think, because Iowa is not that well known in my country. Like, people were still confused over what the state is, but what drew me there was definitely the writing program. I'm an English and creative writing student, and I just heard so much about that program. And then I came there, and I was so scared of coming to Iowa just because I didn't know anyone there, like, at all. And a lot of my friends were like, at least try to go somewhere where you know people. But honestly, this might sound cliche, but I think the moment I landed in Iowa, like, everyone is just so nice. And I came with my parents, and they were just like, okay, everyone's so nice. I feel okay with leaving you here and going back. And I think after that, it was just all okay.
Yeah. Well, when you first arrived, did it take you some time to adjust, or did you feel more or less immediately comfortable in this new environment?
It was a little hard, I guess. I mean, I think it's just internationally, you think of America and you have this viewpoint. It's not as if I was like completely unaware of what Iowa would look like, but I guess I didn't expect all that corn. Like, I got off the airport, it was just cornfields, and it was like, this is not what I pictured any of this to look like. But I mean, like I said, everyone was just so nice. I still remember. So we took a cab from the airport and we were coming to the university. And the cab driver, he was, we were telling him that I was here for the university. So he just like took us around and showed us all the buildings. And we were just like, he didn't have to do that, but he literally gave us a tour of Iowa City before dropping us off. So I guess I was just like taken aback by that. And I guess there were some certain elements of trying to fit in and having this cultural shock in certain elements. But for the most part, I think it was very easy to find a home in Iowa City.
And so you got involved in organizations apparently fairly early on. Is that right?
Yeah, I was always involved in school, and for me, I think I've always been that person who really want to be doing something all the time. And I think it's also something about being an international student. It's like you're going all the way out to another country, and you really want to make your mark there. You don't want to just, I don't know, get your education and come back and not have that experience mean for nothing. So I really wanted to do a lot. And in the beginning, it was a lot of event planning that I got involved in, which turned to more leadership and advocacy efforts. And it's been great. I really love everything that I've been able to do.
So it seems to me from the things I've read about you that this sense of community, finding a sense of belonging, and then helping other students, particularly international students, find their little niche here at Iowa so that they also can enjoy that feeling of community. That's been important to you.
Yes, yeah. And I also said this in my profile. I think it's also because and everyone has been saying this before, the sense of giving back. And when I came to the university, I met so many people who were so ready to take me in. I met this whole bunch of Sri Lankan graduate students who were amazing. They just, they were just showing us around, and they really were a big part of making me feel at home. And then I met so many of the students who like I was able to call as my community. And I think as I grew older, I mean, I'm a junior now, and I think after being there for 3 years, it has become very important for me to give that same sense back to students. And I think at the beginning, even from the get-go, that has been at the back of everything that I was doing. Even the events that I was planning, it was a lot about making sure that people are feeling at home and expanding the diversity within campus. I think the international and multicultural community at Iowa is amazing because we're a small group of people, I guess, relatively, which actually makes us closer. I feel like you know everyone through someone somehow. And it's amazing to see that level of connection. And I really want to make sure that students who are coming in also get that same treatment that I was able to get.
Sure, sure. Well, it probably, it might be remiss of me not to mention that you are joining us from Sri Lanka. You are doing your courses virtually, like many students are right now, and all of them will be before too long. But you are not just sitting in an apartment in Iowa City doing your courses virtually. You are up in the middle of the night taking your coursework in Sri Lanka. So tell us about that adjustment.
Sure. I mean, technically it's not night. Now it's 6 a.m. You can see the sun is up. It wasn't up before. It has been an experience for sure, not just being in a different time zone, but kind of moving back home has been very interesting because I think as an international student, I've really gotten used to the idea of like being away from home and being by myself and that independence that comes with it. Not that I don't like being back home, but it's definitely a very interesting experience. But I mean, I think being in this position has actually helped me advocate for international students a lot more this year because like you mentioned earlier, this has been a very challenging year. And I think I've been in the midst of all those very challenging experiences that a lot of students are facing with regards to going home or concern about going home and all that. So if anything, even though it's been challenging, it's been helpful for me to understand and advocate for these experiences a lot more. And I guess also definitely more appreciative of Iowa City. I really miss that place and I really miss certain things. Like I love downtown Iowa City. I really miss it. I'm like almost always at Pride Lights. So
well, we'll be happy to have you back when that day comes. I hope it's not too far off in the future. And Nicholas, let me just turn to you now. Congratulations to you on your Global Student Award as well. We mentioned earlier that you're a PhD candidate, and your award recognizes you for furthering globalization through international research. So tell us what led you into the field of educational policy and leadership studies.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so kind of like Mishma talks about the academic experience and the co-curricular experience, finding a sense of belonging on campus. When I was an undergraduate, I did all of the activities. I was the person who was always involved outside the classroom. And what I found was, oh my goodness, there are so many structures in place at every university or college to structure the student experience so that those meaningful moments happen. And I wanted to be somebody who was part of building those experiences for students. So I went and I got a degree in higher education and student affairs. I worked in the field for a few years, and now I'm here at Iowa trying to learn about the ways that these experiences that people have through their academic programs at universities really change their lives and change the world.
Well, it sounds like a perfect follow-up to the segment we had before, where Don and of course Pat and Susan were talking about the importance of sharing what they've learned with other people and helping to spread the joy really of education and the educational experience. But Nicholas, I understand that you're involved in projects in Kosovo, in North Macedonia, and in Norway. Tell us how that all works.
Fantastic faculty and wonderful bridge building. So, we were hearing before about sister states partnerships, and one of the other sister states of Iowa is Kosovo, and we have this meaningful relationship. There's a consulate in Des Moines for Kosovo, and being able to know that when I got the Stanley to go to Kosovo for that research, there would be people who knew Iowa, who knew that we have a long-standing partnership, and being here really allowed for that connection there. I've had fantastic mentorship in my program because of the way that international programs here at Iowa is truly valued. It's not just in name, but it's also in supporting faculty who can support students and supporting the students directly. And so being able to build more international networks has been part of that. And with Norway, I think about we are partners with the University of Oslo. Sometimes we have classes with another cohort of students there. We've done exchanges. We have digital collaborative resources together, and just being able to bring us a little bit closer. It has made all the difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you could speak just for a moment about some of the things that, as you have observed educational systems and leadership styles in different countries and different setups, how do you think that has changed your own work, your pursuit of your own PhD, your own writing? What has this close observation of other countries done for your work?
Yeah, it was so funny. So earlier today, for example, I was in a meeting about research about law schools. And people were talking about the way that the law school application process worked and all of these different things. It was entirely about US processes, but the parallels between the way specific US law schools work and the Norwegian higher education application system, it's uncanny. And so I wouldn't know that, and I wouldn't be able to think through some of the micro barriers that people are facing in these things if it weren't for having an international comparison to be able to draw from. And while it seems serendipitous, these are the kinds of things that happen all the time because of the way that we can start to look at comparative international higher education work through a lens that maybe our unique way of doing things isn't so unique, and maybe there are things that we can learn from others as we share across borders.
So we talked a minute about some of the personal challenges that Mishma faced when she came here as a new international student. What about you when you launched off on your first international projects? Were there any barriers you had to overcome or special challenges?
Yeah. So I think my biggest regret when I was an undergraduate student was not studying abroad. I did not do any type of structured international work until I became a graduate student here. And so I was like, well, am I too old to do some of this stuff for the first time? And am I too gay to do some of this stuff for the first time? I was really worried about traveling to another national context and being an openly gay man. And the support that I received was overwhelmingly helpful. Are contexts different? Absolutely. Are there different approaches? Yes. Is crossing a border of any type a difficult thing? Yes. And I come from a place where I know that the challenges that I face in maybe my slight discomfort are not going to be at the same level as somebody who might be living those challenges day in and day out. And so my challenge to just get over it and do good work was something that took a little bit of time. And I'm glad that, I had the opportunity to work through some of that myself.
And if I remember correctly, when President Harreld was making his remarks, he talked about your interest in diversity and seeing what you can do to help expand diversity in all kinds of educational contexts.
Yeah, and I would think that the start is awareness. Be aware of the human rights situations in the different national contexts that you're moving into and through. When you're thinking about ways to build a partnership that might involve some type of collaborative work in that context that is maybe not the US context. What do people say they need rather than what you think they need? Those types of things, that goes a long way. And that's to me where this intercultural understanding and an appreciation for diverse work comes from. So that's where I start with that. And I hope that will carry through.
I'm sure it will. And Mishma, it sounds a little bit like some of the things you've been dealing with as you sit on the ISAB board and as you try to help our university understand a little bit better some of these challenges, not only during COVID, but at other times as well, that students who come to the US from someplace else have to deal with.
Yeah, of course. And I really love how you put it, Nick, about how certain news and certain social justice movements or whatever could be seen from different places in different ways and how they all intersect. And I think I've never been more aware of it than right now and in this year, because I'm back in Sri Lanka and I see how people react to US news. And I was in the US and I see how we look at the rest of the world. And I have a social justice minor and I sit in my classes and then I wonder, like some of these things I would never see it in this perspective because it's a very US perspective. So I guess I'm always happy and there to give that perspective that a lot of students are hearing for the first time. And I think that's also a really big thing about international education, just in general, or working with international students, because sometimes I say things and my peers and students and my friends are like, I never thought about that way because it's just not the position you're in. And it's not their fault, technically. You can't always think from the perspective of another country, but it's definitely eye-opening. And I think that's definitely like what we are celebrating this week, even the whole thought of bringing all those different perspectives together.
Mm-hmm. So before we wrap up here, I know that we had a little hint of what you will want to do once you graduate from the university, once you finish your PhD, Nick. I guess you're interested in perhaps going into teaching?
Yeah, I would love to be a professor doing research, teaching, and the service component of being in a higher education institution. It's not just about, the things that happen in the lab or in a particular classroom, but how the university as a whole sets its mission. And I think the best place to be able to do some of that is from a professorial role.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it sounded like President Harreld was ready to get that contract out right now.
Let's do it.
And Mishma, for you, obviously a creative writing, English major, what do you want to do?
Yes. So my one true love is children's literature. I just have a special bond with it. I grew up reading them, of course, and like a lot of students around the world, that's how I learned English. And here I am as an English major. The reason why is children's books. I also think they're very, very important to once again learn about the world, because they're both a mirror and a window to the world for a lot of kids. So that's where my passion lies. So both about writing them and also research in them, especially with regards to inclusion and diversity and all these themes that I keep bringing up. There's a pattern, as you can see, but yeah.
The people who are listening now, and congratulations again on the Global Student Awards that you richly deserve. So Mishma, Nixon, thank you. And Nick Stroup, thank you. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's been watching the program this afternoon. Thanks to all of our earlier guests, and particularly the International Impact Award winners, Sue and Pat Keefe and Sarah Lande. I hope you'll be with us also on December 8th at 5:30 for our next program, when we discuss teaching and learning post-COVID. And a reminder that if you're interested in International Education Week activities, you can find them at international.uiowa.edu. So for International Programs at the University of Iowa, I'm Joan Kerr. Good night.